Okay, so can you simply explain what a chatbot is and then your reaction to what he has experienced?
Yeah, sure. So a chatbot is just, most of our viewers probably have interacted with the chatbot in some way. They've been online and some little pop-up box says, "Can I help you?" And it's not a person, it's a computer program. It's a piece of software, and you say, "Yeah, I want to return my item," or how long is the refund policy? And you just interact with it. You talk to it like you would a person.
A lot of government institutions are utilizing
Sure.
these.
Yeah. Right. Now, importantly, there's two different ways, or there's broadly speaking two different ways of doing a chatbot. There's called the old school and the new school way. The new school way is using like a ChatGPT. So this is large language model. It's ChatGPT. There's another company called Anthropic that has Claude. Google has, did they still call it Bard? No, now they call it Gemini. So there's all these large language models. This is the most cutting edge large language model chatbot technology. That stuff, so that's in one bucket. One thing that's important about that bucket is that it's well known for generating what gets called hallucinations, or some people call confabulations. In short, it just outputs false information. So if it doesn't know the answer, it'll just make it up. Some people call it, it's a BS machine. So it's it doesn't just say, "Oh, here's the answer." It does so confidently in many cases. So that's large language models, and they can be used as chatbots, but the danger is that they can output false information. So-called old school chatbots, what I'm calling old school chatbots, they don't have that kind of flexibility. If you pre-program it with the questions and answers. And so it can't go off the rails because it's just on very specific rails. If you say, when is election day, if it's not programmed to say it's on this day, then it won't say it. If it says it's on this day, it'll say that day. So it's very clear cut. It can say this, it cannot say that. If you're using a large language model of that, that first bucket variety, and there's crucial information like when's election day, when do I have to register by, whatever it is, that's dangerous. That seems on the face of it quite dangerous because it can hallucinate, it can make up false information, and then you have people misguided, not through any fault of their own, and then they don't wind up voting, or they vote for people that they didn't want to vote for because they falsely believed what the beliefs of the person were, the policy positions were. If we're talking about an old school chatbot, that's fine. I don't see any reason why you would use a large language model for this kind of case. If it's just purely information about things like when's election day and where can I vote, things like that, there's no reason to use this large language model stuff.
Well, I think the idea is that young people, for example, are going to say, "Hey, ChatGPT, tell me when the election day is, or when can I register to vote?" You're saying that's not that common.
Well, I don't think we have any reason to think that Google has been unseated, right? That if it were the case that young people were flocking to say at ChatGPT, not using Google search and using ChatGPT instead, we'd see a lot more headlines about it. Google would be very worked up about it, and they are worked up about search to some extent. But it's more it's a fear, it's a proactive thing, as opposed to what we're seeing right now is the youth flocking to large language model chatbots to do their search instead of, say, Google or Bing, for whoever uses that. So I don't see it as a problem yet. It's a scale issue. Look, might there be some people, young or old, who go to ChatGPT to get information and it turns out to be false information? Yeah, I'd be surprised if that weren't the case. But what's the scale here? If we're talking about, a dozen people, no big deal. If we're talking about 100,000 people, big deal. So I don't think we have a sense of what the scale is of people using large language models to ferret out information of high importance, like how do I vote? But if we do see that, that's a real worry.
And similarly, you can get on Google and find false information.
Exactly, right. Plenty of people will Google stuff, and they'll find fake news websites, they'll find just bad advice, and they'll follow that, and that's a bad idea too.
Earlier I'm sorry.
No, so then just the question is the rate at which people are getting false information from a ChatGPT relevant to election cycle or election requirements? Is it so outpacing the false information that people get, say, from a standard Google search? And I haven't seen any research to indicate that there's a big delta there.
Earlier, you talked about watermarks as a potential regulation. How would that even come to be? Would that be federal legislation? I mean, would there be consequences if it was found? Who would regulate this in the first place?
Nobody really knows. So there's two things. One is who's going to regulate it, and the short answer is could be federal, probably unlikely, although they're trying to push for it, and there could be state legislatures that do it. So that's plausible that they could pass such a thing. But then there's a technical problem. Can we actually create these watermarks? in a way that's reliable? Can we create watermarks that don't get hacked? And we don't have that yet. Researchers are working on this sort of thing. There's also debate, should we be watermarking fake content, or should we be watermarking the true content? So maybe what we do is, instead of trying to figure out what all the fake stuff is and watermarking that, maybe we have like a stamp of approval, a stamp of verification for things that come from, PBS Nevada or the New York Times or CNN or whatever it is. So let's try to watermark the stuff that we have verified the source of, as opposed to watermarking the stuff that we can't verify the source of. So there's also this sort of strategic debate about which way should we go. And that is in part a technical question.
Where would you start in regulating AI?
Oh man, where would I start in regulating AI? So the way that I like to think about it is there are some things that are illegal and some things that are unethical. And a lot of stuff is already illegal, so discriminating against people of color, for instance, is illegal. There's questions about how to take anti-discrimination law and apply it to cases in which AI may discriminate against people, as an example. But at least there's strong foundation for, here's the foundation of anti-discrimination law, here's how it should or does apply to AI now. Some of that stuff is, and then you have some things that are unethical but not illegal, and then you have some things that are unethical but we don't want to regulate against. I know this is sort of a long answer, but we have some things that are unethical that you don't want to regulate against. So for instance, it's unethical to cheat on your spouse, let's say, right? But we don't want it to be illegal. That'd be too much government power to put people in jail or impose fines on people for cheating on their spouses, though it is unethical. So when I hear the question, something like, how do you want to regulate AI? The thing that comes to my mind is, okay, so what are the things that are already not illegal? Notice that fraud is illegal already, right? So if you're conducting fraud or discrimination by AI, that's likely going to be illegal as it is. So what are the things that are unethical with AI, that are not currently illegal, that should be legal?
Should be legal or illegal?
Sorry, you're right. So it should be illegal. What are those things that should be illegal that are not already?
Okay.
And it can't just be that, well, this is unethical, so it should be illegal. That's not the case.
Right.
And so that's a really hard question to answer, and it's not clear. My general stance towards regulation probably has evolved since the last time we spoke a year ago, which is that I think we're jumping a little bit too quickly into most regulation. I'd like to see more, let's take the law that we have now and see how it applies, like anti-discrimination law. There's lots of speculation by various parties about what the capabilities of AI are, what people are going to do with it, and we don't have a ton of evidence about what are the actually bad things that are going down. We have fear, but not a lot of good evidence of here's all the bad stuff that's going on right now that's having really bad impacts. And in the presence of that fear and in the presence of that ignorance, that's a bad place to start creating wise regulations from.
Reid Blackman, maybe we'll have you back next year and see how much has changed.
Sounds good.
Thank you for joining Nevada
Thanks for
Week.
having me.